Welcome back to the Cycling Demystified podcast, your podcast for exploring the art, craft, and people behind Bike Fit. Brought to you by the Foundation Bike Fit team. Welcome back, guys. Welcome back, Matt and Matt.
Highway.
Hi.
Yeah, you guys are enthusiastic as ever.
It's the tour.
We are. It's the tour. We're going to talk about time trial bikes.
Yeah. Today we are going to do the time trial issue of the Tour Series podcast.
I mean, we're a couple of days late, to be fair, but
I don't know. You need to digest it. You know, we've got, like the tour's like a fine wine. You know, like take it in. You know, let the flavors build, let the story build. And then
you and I drink different wine.
I don't really drink wine anymore. But we're also going to make a little segue, I think, into Challenge Roth. So one for you triathletes out there.
God,
the rest of you
trial bikes and triathlon bikes all
it's
in one
silly
go.
Season, isn't it? Everything's coming out now. We've got new bikes. We've got observations from setups, different saddles. If you were following along with last week's double whammy episode across the weekend, we did a lot of saddle chat. I think we've got some more saddle chat here, but also just some general observations around positions, the kit that's been used on their bikes, and also lots of new releases and maybe some differences between the Tour time trial versus triathlon, where the positions are definitely trending towards a different style as well. So yeah, let's get into it. Should we do Tour first or Roth first?
Let's do the Tour first, because I think only we care about Roth.
So then everyone can switch off.
And everyone can switch off after we've done the Tour.
Oh, yeah. Roth is actually pretty good this year. There's some really interesting stuff. Some really interesting biomechanical stuff as well, which we need to dig into. So we'll see what we can do. What was your favourite time trial bike of the Tour this year then?
Or
favourite?
In what sense?
I don't know. Like, let's go pure looks first of all. I mean, there's some wild stuff out there, like the BMC time trial time machine. That new one just looks like the Hope track bike. It's got some wild chainstays coming out.
I mean, the Colorado is nice. There's no getting around it.
Colorado is pretty good.
Yeah.
Controversial opinion. I really like that Orbea.
Yeah, that's what I was going to scroll down to find. Like, I reckon my favourite time trial bike of this year's Tour is that Orbea from Lotto.
Oh, nice.
I think it's really cool.
Yeah, super nice.
Yeah, like a little bit different, but I think it just in kind of that all black kind of colorway. I think it looks really
Stealthy.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Got the mono
and they've got
riser.
some cool cockpit stuff going on as well.
Yeah, what cockpits are they using?
So it's a Speed Bar, which is a Dutch company. Yeah. So all kind of like custom molded, 3D printed to riders, like individual forearms. So
they were one of the first, weren't they? Come out with this concept. They looked pretty janky, I remember. It looked like someone just made one out.
Oh, the first ones were like well ghetto.
Just sent someone in their shed, just like molding bits of.
I remember like years and years ago, it must have been like pre-COVID, like Colin, like
time before COVID.
Colin sent me a photo of his mate, Romain Guillaume, who was getting like, they basically showed the process. And he basically had his like arms covered in like plaster of Paris.
It's like paper mache.
It's all really Blue Peter. And they were like scanning him with like all these like lasers and stuff, like to basically get like a 3D kind of like picture of where he was on his bike and what his proportions were.
Yeah.
And then they basically created a mold out of that and made him a handlebar. It's quite cool. So long-winded answer to your question, the Orbea.
Yeah, there we go. But that's the trend now, isn't it? There's hardly anybody with, say, like a traditional cockpit, which we would see on, say, like an entry-level time trial bike where you've got the extension and then the pad as a separate element. Yeah. Nowadays, everything's integrated, so the pad integrates with the extension itself. It's all kind of one molded piece, and I guess in the ideal sense, you would match the shape of the extension armrest to your exact forearm dimensions as well.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like great in principle. And if you got €3,000 to spend on a cockpit, that's wicked. But I think like a lot of some of the issues we see with like, so we see a lot of the profile design stuff in the studio, and they've come out with, I think it's variations, but I think the ones that we see most common are the 43 ASC extensions, which are kind of profiled, if you like, or sort of semi-molded to try and get more contact through your forearm. Yeah, and that's great if it fits your arm, but it can create a bit of pressure where you don't want it if it doesn't.
Yeah,
I think if you're going like two-piece, like more traditional, but with a more molded profile to the extension, you got to be really careful because it can actually create more problems than it solves.
Yeah, everything just gets more specific, right?
Yeah,
and so the angle at which your wrist interacts with the aerobar extension, that becomes like a really important part of the comfort elements. We're looking at a BMC time trial bike here.
That to me looks like a watch shot.
Does look very much like a watch shot
on the BMC.
Yeah. So that's an interesting system where they've got the aerobar extension, but you can change out the hand grips. So you can either have it pointing upwards, or in this case, it's got the grips pointing inwards. So you can rotate your wrist around at 90 degrees and just lots of different angles and different sizes. So you do need a degree of customization to get a comfortable position. So I think we're going to see just more and more and more of this, like different systems that offer different levels of customizability in terms of how to get your hand and wrist and forearm in the right position.
But I think the kind of the thing that we probably want to go into before we start waffling about all these bikes is that why is the trend for these big surface area one piece kind of like integrated pad and extension cockpits? Why has this become more of a thing?
I was wondering if, Chan, you've been riding a bit of aerobar extensions at the moment?
Not like this.
He had one go around the park.
Yeah. Do you have aerobars in your last triathlon?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you find those?
Good fun.
That's why he won the bike.
You came like fourth fastest or something, didn't you?
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But none of that mattered anyway because I was probably last out of swim.
But how was your aerobar experience?
Yeah, it was good actually. I've realised how individual of an experience it is, I think, and how kind of different everyone's requirements are, maybe, in terms of how they like their kind of aerobars to feel. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah. Super individual. But you were on a traditional, like 2 or 3 piece cockpit.
On a road bike, to be clear.
On a road bike, yeah. So you've got a relatively small pad that sits towards the elbow and supports the forearm at the kind of widest part of your forearm, so under the meaty bit of your forearm.
Yeah, so there's a big gap between sort of most of your forearm and your hands in terms of the contact.
Yeah.
So I totally get why you'd want more surface area, which I think is kind of what you were alluding to.
Yeah. And just gives you way more support, and the more you can support your body in the time trial position, then it's just clear advantages, right?
Yeah. So I think it's twofold, right? It's force over area. So the more you can distribute the force over the area of your forearm, then the more stable you're going to be. Mm-hmm. And then that's the kind of the sensible bike fit related answer. And the other answer is more aerodynamic. Mm-hmm. Because the wind will move across that
it's fairing, isn't it?
It's a fairing.
Everything's a fairing now.
So the wind moves across that surface more with less kind of disruption. That's the word I'm looking for, which is kind of the name of the game. So you're kind of creating more support, which means increased stability, which means more control, less postural stress, and also at the same time you're creating a fairing, which is going to make you go faster.
Yeah, the postural stress element is an interesting bit. So
we'll get into that when we get into Roth, I think, because obviously the gents of the Tour, the guys and gals that ride the Tour and the Tour de France Femme, are restricted in what they can do by our Lord and Saviours at the UCI. So, like the positions that they can achieve are somewhat kind of, tempered a little bit by the rules and regs about the positions that you can.
I just want to say as well for the casual rider who may be listening to this thinking, that sounds great. I'm just going to cover my arms in carbon. Can you get to your brakes?
So this is the thing. We're talking about a race that's held on closed roads with riders that are like at the peak skill level of the sport, and there's a great skill in riding a time trial bike, and they are on glass roads the team time trial was in Spain, right, in Barcelona. So the roads there are generally pretty good. They're not riding around Essex or Surrey, which is like a moonscape, and trying to dodge white vans and Range Rovers, or Richmond Park trying to dodge deer. So yeah, like, take it with a pinch. There is definitely a skill that needs to be practiced in riding a time trial bike, but if you can create more stability with your contact points, that's a good start.
So more molded, customized aerobar extensions to come.
However, it is not necessary at all. I'd just like to point that out as well. You don't need to go and spend like a ridiculous sum of money getting a custom aerobar, one-piece aerobar.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's why we have them in here, but we use them as a kind of upgrade option. Once you've proven your position, then you can go buy the nice fancy stuff. I'm going to throw a slightly controversial thought out there for you guys. I don't think most of the teams actually care about time trialing or the team time trial at Barcelona.
Some teams do.
Some
a
teams
lot
do.
Don't.
So teams who bring out trays of ice water and get their team members to dip their elbows into ice water just before the time trial, they care.
Yeah. Ineos care.
Yeah. They came second.
Yeah.
But, for the rest of the peloton, they just want to get around,
Yeah.
right?
So if you're Alpecin de Koenig, you don't care about a team time trial,
Yeah.
like, at all, because that's not why you're at the tour.
Yeah.
But for the GC teams and Ineos, the big time trial teams, like, you can actually lose time, quite a bit of time, if you have a subpar team time trial performance. I want to say as well, actually, the format of the team time trial this year, I think was really exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like what they did, what the organisers did there, like, made time
Mix it
trialing
up.
like really exciting. Because like team time trial, you just think, all right, it's a procession.
Yeah.
Whatever. But actually, the way they did it with, kind of like the sort of the new take on the
fastest
timings
man
and
over
the
the
fastest man. Like, I think it made it actually really exciting, and I think it actually made it more important in terms of this, essentially the first week, not to lose.
Well, there's going to be one guy on the team, or on every team, that wants to do relatively well.
On GC.
So, you just got to.
So I think that kind of gave people a bit of an impetus to take it a bit more seriously than they otherwise would.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I can see that.
But it made for like much more exciting, viewing, I thought.
Yeah. Like, I tend to like time trials because you can. It is the one discipline in the tour where guys are actually optimized. The guys who care about it, like Ganna.
There's 4 people that are optimized.
Like,
Poggy, Jonas, Ganna, and Campenarts.
if you're Jasper Philipsen,
Mate, just look at like
you're just getting on with it.
Nairo Quintana back in the day on a time trial bike. That is the very definition of not optimized. But you're right. It's like, you can choose how much optimization you want, right? And I think that's kind of the fun with time trialing and time trial bikes in general. I mean, you look at like the time trial scene in the UK, like, or what it was certainly, like super nerdy middle-aged men, like, like racing on like, the A414 at like 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. These guys are optimized to the max.
But do you reckon
it's fun?
Do you reckon they're more optimized than, say? I mean, you guys got the inside scoop from Dowsett not so long ago. If you're on like Caja Rural, like, do you reckon the weakest guy on that?
Polka dots right now.
Yeah, but not because of the team time trial.
No, that was because it was yesterday.
Yeah. So do you reckon like the weakest guy on that team is like optimized to the max as much as maybe your competent amateur at your local 10 mile?
Well, it depends on budget, right?
Are they just getting on with it?
Yeah. And this is a good point as well, because a lot of them are just getting on with it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of teams, like, other than like the big sort of 4 or 5 teams, don't have the budget to go that deep into every person in that squad for a time trial bike, like wind tunnel time, aerobars, etc., etc. So it's like, where's the best use of time and resources? And if you're kind of like the proverbial 12th man on Kaya Rual, you're not optimized at all. But if you're Jonas or Poggi or Ganna or like Remco, like it makes sense to spend a lot of time optimizing your position, but then a lot of time riding that position so that you are kind of ready to go as fast as possible when the time comes.
Yeah, you don't want to lose the Tour because of a bad time trial.
Exactly.
Because you didn't spend time,
in your position. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I can't remember who it was, but might even been Wiggins. Like, every week he'd touch his time trial bike. Like, and that's why he was so fluid on it and so good on it. I remember watching. Oh no, go on. This is irrelevant.
Oh no, I was just thinking back to Glasgow World Championships, Bingham versus Ganna. In the velodrome, and Dan Bingham, he is the optimization man. He is optimized to the max. Like, he's the walking, living, breathing, man of optimization. So, his engine is, sorry, Dan, but like it probably average compared with the rest of the World Tour pros. Yeah. But, he can go so fast just because he gets every watt out of his, optimization.
To be clear, it's still miles ahead of the average weekend warrior.
Sure. Yeah. But he can compete with Ganna, right? And, I can't remember what it came down to, like point something,
it was like
one.
Yeah.
For the second, Ganna won.
But saying that, it's like you think about like how optimized Dan Bigham was, like in that race when he did the hour, etc. Like I was thinking back to the Olympics in 2016 and that ridiculously hilly course, and watching Cancellara do that. Like the guy, like you can't say his time trial position is optimized at all compared to like what Froome was doing back in in the Sky Days, what Wiggins was doing back in the Sky Days. But the sheer skill that Cancellara has on a time trial bike, because he spent so long riding that position, like watching him go around some of those corners on those descents in his aerobars was like proper scary stuff. So you can optimize as much as you want, but if you're not comfortable in the position and able to handle that bike, you're never going to get the most out of it. And I think kind of like this is what separates, I think, the good time trialists and the great time trialists, at World Tour level, where tenths do matter. Yeah, and you've got to be able to ride.
Just watch them going through a corner.
Yeah,
like it sounds silly, doesn't it? But going around corners is probably the most, important.
That's where you save the most time. Yeah,
like carrying your speed.
Yeah, I've definitely learned this from my recent aerobar experience as well. Like taking a racing line in the aerobars is, you got to think about it.
Yeah.
Whereas you might not necessarily have to think about it as much when you're just banging around in the drops.
And I think this is why, like, positionally, like, you can kind of get sidetracked by the optimization element of it, trying to make yourself as narrow as possible and, trying to get yourself as tucked up as possible. But what happens when, you are presented with a corner? Can you go around a corner in that position, or are you having to break the position to go around the corner to slow down, which in that case you may have lost time anyway? So it's kind of this balance between actually riding the bike and making the bike handle well versus optimizing in inverted commas for speed and aerodynamics.
It's very easy to make a good time trial position in the fit room.
Totally.
Doesn't mean it's going to work outside.
100%.
Real world aero.
Yeah. And this is like, different at amateur level and different for triathlon and different for time trialing.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of, fit and kind of position yourself relative to the demands of your sport.
Yep, for sure.
I would say.
So, optimization important for all of us, but, we just got to, I would say take the Tour time trial positions with a pinch of salt. This is probably a good example of like, wow, the guys who aren't right at the pointy ends, like, they're just trying to get around, and so their positions probably shouldn't be something that you want to emulate. Though the guys who are absolutely optimized, they spent a lot of time really dialing into the details and figuring out what works for them. And as we all know now, aerodynamics is so personal that, you know, if you really want to get into it, then, you know, it's a very personal endeavor. So, you know, what might work for them might not work for you too.
Also, on that, sorry, I know we're going to talk about Roth in a minute, but if you're a triathlete looking to these positions, then, I mean, like, how long was the team time trial the other day?
19K?
Yeah,
19,
short of
1-9, exactly,
Yeah.
and they didn't have to go for a long run afterwards.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Well, this is the demands
the
of the
goal
sport,
is
isn't
very
it?
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've also noticed something about these time trial bikes that were at the tour, is that how low the base bars are. Right.
Yeah, look at that Cervelo.
So a Cervelo kind of like, this is not a stock Cervelo cockpit. We know that. But look at Jonas's Cervelo, right? The base bar on that thing is so low compared to like Remco's like Shift, or, you know, the Shift from, you know, Red Bull or Quickstep. But then you look at Poggy's base bar and it's flat. And I reckon, this is bro science, but I reckon this is kind of the, you know, on a TT with like corners, that's going to make a difference. Because if you're under less postural stress getting down to the base bar, if you do have to break the aero position and come to the base bar to go around a corner, if you're going down so low where your weight is then kind of too far over the front end and you're unbalanced, then that is also going to slow you down. So I know it's more aero, like, you know, to get the base bar kind of lower because it kind of breaks the wind relative to your legs. But again, if you can't handle that super low base bar position on like a technical time trial, then you might run into bother again. Like you look at like Ganna's Morello, he runs a mega low base bar relative to where his arms are. And like that's stressful to get down there, and that's going to like tip the balance of the bike as well, maybe not in a good direction.
Well, this is where experience and testing come into it.
Yeah.
Definitely. So for us amateurs, definitely being able to reach the brakes, extremely important.
Yeah.
Safety first, folks. Safety first. Maybe that's a good segue into Roth then. Because the time trial bikes are quite different for triathlon, and we can see the trend kind of going in a different direction, would you say?
Definitely. So Roth this year, biggest kind of like race outside of Ironman. Canyon basically launched a new version of their time trial bike, Speedmax CFR, which Sam Laidlow, Rico Bogan, amongst others, were riding. And it was kind of interesting to see that a lot of like the top guys had actually sized up.
Yeah.
So I think Sam especially had gone from riding an L to an XL on the new bike.
And he won the race.
And he won the race. Just like, let's be fair, he overbiked.
Yeah.
100%. Like those boys were riding so hard at the front, like not even funny.
Well, it's team tactics, wasn't it, this time?
Well, it kind of was, yeah. So obviously we all knew kind of like Christian Blumenfeld was going to run the quickest by probably at least 5-6 minutes. So yeah, they ganged up on him and they made the swim really hard. They made the bike ridiculously hard, and it kind of worked. But if the race had been a couple of K longer, I reckon it could have been different. But anyway, so the bike positions, that I think part of the reason that they have sized up is there's a trend in triathlon at the moment to essentially get your front end as high as possible and as far away from you as possible compared to what we saw, say, I don't know, 10 years ago. We were just looking at like Sebastian Kienle from like, you know, like Kona era 2014.
Yeah, and Frodo.
Yeah,
Like,
which was very much of the Cancellara kind of ilk. Low hands, very long, very low. Whereas now everyone's kind of going long and high. And I think, yeah, these new bikes are kind of like facilitating those sorts of positions. So sizing up gives you longer reach, or on the Canyon, gives you longer reach, higher stack, but the seat tube angle is consistent. Like it's consistent across kind of like all the sizes, or at least always was.
Just to be clear, we're talking about long distance triathlon.
Yeah, long distance triathlon here. So the idea being that you create a very aerodynamic position, so your head's very close to your hands, you know, kind of like good kind of contact or a good position with your head relative to your back, but you're creating that kind of posture with way less postural stress, because you now have to go and run a 2:30. Basically, if you want to win a race, a long distance race, you need to be running 2:30.
Yeah, just keeps your body a little bit more upright, a little bit more open.
But these guys are now essentially running on the bike. Like, so, these massively forward positions, because we've got these like huge kind of like aerobars which support the whole forearm as well as the elbow. We've got a much more stable platform at the front end, so you can put a lot more weight over the front of the bike, so a lot more support for the upper body, and you get a lot more posterior chain recruitment from that forward position, because you're effectively extending your leg behind you, kind of like running. We were chatting about this the other day, but I think this is a podcast for another day. We'll park that.
Talking about posterior.
Posterior chain, kind of spinal engine theory and contralateral gait, all this kind of stuff. But basically, they're running on the bike. So the demands of kind of like long course triathlon now are so ridiculous. I mean, I think the top guys were riding 3:55 in Roth for 112 miles.
Laidlaw broke the overall record.
7:21 low, I think. 7:21.12, I think.
Yeah. I think the previous record was like
7:21.20 odd. Which ironically was Blumenfeld on a downhill course.
So and this is where Canyon have kind of really nailed it, I think, with their new Speedmax. Like, I have to give credit to Canyon. They've really thought about this.
I'm going to put it on record. I'm going to say the Speedmax is the best tri bike you can buy at the moment.
The new one.
Yeah.
Because they've got the integrated front end, like aerobar extension, which looks like a one-piece like cradle for your kind of arms. It creates that aerodynamic kind of barrier, fairing. Literally, the whole armrest wraps around your arms, but it's adjustable at the same time. So it's they built the almost like customizable front end. Ideal customizable front end, so you can make it a little bit wider, a little bit longer, and it also integrates the hydration into it. So again, I think it's been proven that tucking your hydration in between your forearms is the most aerodynamic. So you got to stick it in there, but it all just comes in a really neat package. And thankfully, they've also added in some angle adjustment, which was always the issue with Canyon front end cockpits, like just not being able to angle the cockpit enough or have enough options for it. So I think they're getting there. They know what they want.
They know what they need. So the original CFR was designed for Jan Frodeno, who had like ridiculously long legs, short torso, but preferred like a very flat kind of like cockpit, so with very little angle on it. Whereas now we know that with the trend to go higher and more forward, more angle brings your head close to your hands, less pressure on your kind of shoulders, but also this angled spacer now has an extra 25 mil of reach to it. So you're facilitating that more forward position as well as bringing your hands higher. Overall, just more stable front end, less postural stress.
When do you reckon we're going to see one in the studio? We're going to see one.
Next week. When's it drop? Like, is it out yet? Can you buy one?
I don't know. I have to look at the website.
But we're just looking at like Rico Bogan's bike, like on the screen. And there's an article that Slow Twitch did on it, and like to look at it, it doesn't look mental at all. Like his saddle is like it's forward, but it's bang in the middle of the rails. He's riding an ISM PN 4.0, 4.1,
3.1 maybe,
something like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like crazy at all, and he actually looks really good on his bike. Like, looks really balanced, really stable. Like, I mean, the dude's pushing all the watts, but he looks in control of it, and that's kind of like the most important thing. And this is why he came second. Like on his long course debut. Yeah, nuts.
He came
third. Yeah. Christian came second, didn't he? But this is the trend that we're kind of seeing, is like for these positions, especially for long course triathlon, to get higher and longer, just to prioritize stability, less postural stress, and posterior chain kind of recruitment.
Well, it's just recognizing that the rider is the greatest drag element in the equation of aerodynamics. And so the bike has to support, the greatest, or the position that you can sustain for your event. And if it's Ironman, that's, usually a long day out. We're also looking at the craziest thing about this bike is the seat post. So let's talk a bit about the seat posts and saddles. Interestingly, ISM saddles still seem to be
You don't see as many of them as you used to.
But if we go back to the Tour, like we saw from last week's podcast, Pro Logo is the dominant saddle brand of the Tour. Yeah, we're looking at the Predator saddle here, the 1,000-pound saddle.
Yeah, this is on a Jumbo Visma Cervelo.
Yeah. But what's interesting about that is that is an integrated, so the saddle and the seat post, I believe, look like an integrated system now. And we saw the same on Renko's new Shiv. So the new Shiv has a dedicated saddle and seat post combo. We saw this originally from Dash saddles. I think they made them originally for Jumbo before they've now changed to Pro Logo.
I remember years ago you could get an integrated seat post for the old rim brake P5.
Really?
You get an integrated saddle seat post combo Dash made for the old P5, and we're talking 2014 here.
Wow. So just to be clear, this is where the seat post interface with the saddle is unique. So rather than having a generic clamp that clamps two rails on the saddle, these are just kind of, I guess we call it a monopost.
Yeah, similar to the Stork Cell Italia one that we talked about the other day.
Yeah.
The mono link.
Rail, yeah. So, each saddle and seat post has to be unique. So Dash now supply, if you look at their website, they supply any number of different seat posts to fit different time trial bikes, which will then integrate with their saddles specifically. So you buy the saddle and the seat post together.
There's a 27.2, allegedly.
Allegedly. I can't find it, but there's
a dual rail saddle as well,
yeah,
which they make, but they also make the fully integrated, the clean version. So do you think that actually makes that much difference though?
Do you want the cynical answer?
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
It makes no difference. Because if you don't get on with that shape of saddle, then you've had it.
Yeah.
But interestingly with saddles, I think you mentioned kind of in the Tour, we're getting to the nth degree of optimization here with kind of fairings covering the rails on this new Pro Logo one. Was it Remco's bike with the mono? Is that a mono?
Yeah,
Citero.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think they've taken the Citero upper and they've created a new kind of base for it, which I don't know if you can take it on and off or swap it around or not.
But interestingly, our mate Poggy is just on a normal physic. Normal physic, 3D printed Aries.
Yeah.
So it is personal. As we know with saddles, it's all very personal. There was another one that I sort of found that was quite interesting. So Q365 running the same Pro Logo Predator saddles. Where is it?
There's only a few different saddle brands out on the Tour, and therefore not that many different saddle configurations. And the time trial's so short, you just plonk yourself on it and off you go.
This was it. Yeah. So one of the riders from Astana riding an X-Lab time trial bike is actually using a Pro Logo Scratch road saddle.
Ooh, brave.
On their time trial bike. Kind of rogue, but I respect it. Being two, sometimes road saddles can work on TT bikes for individual cases. Yeah. And we've seen it in the studio before where a lot of TT saddles are quite wide at the nose.
Yeah. So
if you've got a rider with very, very narrow hips and good hip mobility, maybe a road saddle could be more appropriate.
Yeah. I'd say Bontrager or the Trek Aeolus saddle works really well.
Yeah.
Both in certain time trial positions and also aggressive road positions. Definitely done a few of those. So yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting it'd be interesting to ask Alex about, that particular setup.
Well, I think they had a bit of a nightmare, didn't they? Someone stacked it and the whole team went down.
Yeah, it all went wrong. But yeah, and then you look at kind of like, you flip back to Roth.
Yeah, let's have a look at the triathlon setups, because they have free reign really in terms of what they want. I mean, obviously the demands of the sport are very different. They're sitting on their bikes for 4 to 5 hours in a slightly different, more upright TT position.
Yeah,
but there's definitely trends.
I don't know. Was there anything that crazy? Because I feel like at Kona last year there was a few.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I think I noticed that I think Lucy Charles Barkley was riding a Wove saddle, and sitting right on the nose of it.
Yeah.
But I think kind of like with the guys, it was they seemed to sit on a lot more of their saddle, whereas I think a lot of the kind of the leading women on the bike were kind of more in like forward, more kind of like precarious kind of positions. So yeah, Lucy's on like a Wove saddle, which is actually really soft at the nose. And they've got like a really grippy contact patch at the nose of the saddle. Yeah. So maybe she's like super stable there, and she just can sit on that grippy patch, and that's good.
That's an interesting point. Just going back to you saying how they all sit right on the nose of the saddle, and I think people take this as like this is the ideal place to be sat on the nose.
This is not the way.
Well, there's a very good reason why they're so far forward, right? And for them, it's just because they're just creating so much power out of their legs constantly that their legs are doing most of the work to support their bodies and literally lifting themselves off the saddle so that they don't really have to place that much weight on the saddle.
So I had this conversation with a gent in the studio yesterday who was, at a Canyon, basically the older Speedmax. And he was asking, it's like, where should I sit on my saddle? Like, because I'm right on the nose of it. And I was like, well, you kind of want to sit on as much of it as you can relative to kind of the shape of it. So, as we know, we've gone through our kind of like 10 pillars and we talked about saddles and all this kind of stuff. You kind of want the kind of like the wings of the saddle to support your pelvic structure, like as your pelvis gets wider through kind of like the ridges, the rails of your pelvis, the pubic rami. And this gent was on a particularly short nose saddle, Physic Mystica, or if you're older like I am, the Tritone, which is actually the same saddle, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy was perched right on the end of it. And as soon as we got him to sit on more of it, everything was kind of better. Yeah. So the saddle wasn't necessarily the problem, it was just where it was in space.
Yeah.
And I think, like, especially because age groupers aren't pushing, none of us are riding 355 bike legs for an Ironman. The more you can support your pelvis, if you're pushing way less power than, these kids at the front, then the happier your body's going to be. So actually sitting on kind of the right part of the saddle, whether that's kind of like, more towards the front on a tri-specific saddle or slightly further back if you're on like a road bike on your road saddle, supporting your pelvis is still important.
Yeah.
When you're on a time trial bike, the principles don't change. It's just the application does.
I think it must be said that, for us amateurs, we just want that option of being able to be supported by the saddle. That should be like a default option.
That should be the default. It's not an option. That's the default. And then we choose to move away from that if we want to, but it's a choice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
But that's why, going back to the X-Lab Astana TT bike with a road saddle, maybe that doesn't matter for them. One, because they're creating so much power on the bike that they're not really spending that much time actually sat on the saddle, so they just need something that will get them to the end. And B, they don't really care about time trial. They just want to get through.
And it's 19K.
Yeah.
Which, for the top guys is like, it's nothing. Yeah.
So, in terms of triathlon, then saddle choice becomes much more important. And just because you are going to be sitting on it for more, unless you're Alanis Schiffer.
Well, I think we've got to talk about Alanis, haven't we?
Because talking about like running on the bike.
Yeah.
Essentially, she's just turned cycling into running for 4 hours and then going for another. I don't know how quickly she ran the marathon, but
it wasn't slow. She won. She won the whole thing. She was moving. So it's so Those of you who aren't familiar, Alana Siffert is a Swiss triathlete coached by Brett Sutton.
Pretty young.
Pretty young. She's 24.
Yeah.
Used to do kind of like short course, raced like 10 times a year, like over short distance. Now moved up to long course and is like, yeah, crushing it. So 8:09:09. That's moving. So yeah, so she's riding a Scott Plasma time trial bike, but her position is, should we say, her biomechanics are somewhat very unorthodox. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of been talking about this at length. Like, now we don't know her. We don't know kind of what her kind of like challenges are, what her strengths are on the bike. But to look at her like objectively and without giving any context, like, you know, we don't know, but we can just observe things. Her saddle position looks insanely high, and she is perched right on the nose of her saddle. Her saddle is slammed as far forward as it can go on that bike. It looks like a fairly traditional saddle. I think something maybe like a Gabirmized Stride or something of that ilk. But yeah, she is very, very kind of like, you know, she's got a very kind of extension dominant kind of position, very kind of forward, but it clearly works. So it's like, who are we to say?
It works for now.
It works for now, and it works for her.
Yep.
But
I think like part of what we've been talking about is not necessarily it's interesting to discuss why it works.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, this could be better and this could be better, because ultimately we don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? We don't have any context as to what testing she's done, why she's in this position. It's like when you look at Annemiek van Vleut, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah,
Multiple
objectively,
world
multiple world champ, crushed everything.
Yeah.
Like, to look at her position, you think, wow, that could be better. But could it? Like, it's clearly worked for her over multiple years. So this is the thing, you have to take it all with a pinch. But
again, it works for the task that she's doing, which is winning triathlon races right now. Whereas, you know, is that the same task that we want as amateurs? And I think that's always the context which we need to come back to, is like, you know, seeing the pros really reveling in their abilities and being inspired by what they're doing, but also, you know, just having that question in the back of your mind: would this work for me? Is this how I see myself? Because we have also seen people with similar biomechanics in the fit studio, and you know, that is the main cause of all of their discomfort and issues. And interestingly, you know, I think Siffert runs exactly the same as she rides her bike. So if you watch some videos, I'll put some links in the description below. Like, if you watch her run, her biomechanical gait, her kind of quite a significant internal rotation of her hip, her femur. You can see her kind of like heels flicking out at the bottom of every kind of like stride. And the same happens on the bike as well. And she looks really inefficient. Like, just her body's like kind of wobbling all over the place. She's not singing on saddle at all, but she just looks like she's just muscling her way through it.
But that's the point. She's so strong that she can get it. Like, you know, she has the strength to complete the task at hand.
Yeah, or enough durability
Right
within her body to be able to do that. Yeah.
Can we talk about her specifically, her kind of hip and torso movement as well? Because like, we get a lot of people who come through the fit studio saying, like, oh, there's movement in my lower back. Is that a good thing, or it must be a bad thing, or whatever? And I think, like, we've heard Colby and Lawrence talk about this on their recent podcast, is that kind of not all hip movement is kind of equal.
Yeah, totally.
So like, one thing we commonly see, just to kind of set the scene, is, I'm going to think about how the best way is to describe this kind of over podcast format, is when you kind of come into hip flexion, if you're lacking hip internal rotation, or if you're lacking kind of hip flexion, then what tends to sort of happen in a bike fit scenario is that your hip or your torso or lower back will kind of go the other way. So i.e., as you come into hip flexion on your left hip, everything kind of gets shunted right.
Yeah, so as you come into more flexion on, say, the left side,
So
your right hip will drop.
Yeah, so when we say flexion, we just mean Less
top of the
than
pedal
linear.
stroke.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when your hip is at the most closed angle
Yeah.
possible.
So this is the thing, right? And I think what you're alluding to is we've got this image of Bradley Wiggins and kind of like the robot of the really rigid, solid torso and two legs like a piston as our ideal. The body doesn't work that way. The body's rotary because you have ball and socket joints.
Yeah.
And if you are lacking kind of some kind of like movement in one direction or another, usually internal rotation, then your ball and socket joints can't kind of like move as fluidly as they could. So you're not going to be able to get the shapes to make good muscle contractions and go through the lengthening and shortening cycle of your muscles, basically.
Yeah.
So Lawrence calls it shapes, not squeeze.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the thing. You have to be able to create the shape in order to activate and fire the muscle. And so this kind of rotary movement is actually, if you're in control of it, very biomechanically efficient. And this is what we were talking about the other day with Poggy, which we'll come to in another kind of episode. But this is kind of the thing that Alanis has. Like, she has a lot of kind of rotary kind of movement.
So what I was going to say is it's the opposite of what we commonly see.
Yeah.
And this is why not all this movement is created equal.
Sure.
So what we see, I know we're about to be swept up by the broom wagon, but what we're seeing is as she comes to the top of the pedal stroke, her hips actually move in towards that hip as opposed to away from it, which is what we commonly see if you don't have that space.
And when you're walking and running, this is healthy contralateral gait.
Yeah.
Because you're moving into internal rotation, effectively turning your torso towards your kind of internally rotated forward leg to create kind of like a tension and release as an extension through the posterior chain on the other side as you go through the gait cycle.
Actually, I was thinking about this while watching Del Toro yesterday. If you watch him win, was it stage 2, 3?
Yeah.
It's 2 or 3? I can't remember.
When Poggy chaperoned him to the line.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's going full gas and Poggy's just, twiddling along beside him. But he is throwing his whole body up the climb and you can just see that kind of movement of him.
Contador.
And Contador. Yeah, exactly. What?
But I think these guys, I know. But I think these guys have figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, all this kind of stuff isn't new. Like,
which I think it just comes naturally. Like, as Contador, he's a smaller rider, and so he kind of he doesn't have like the muscle. So he
doesn't have the leverage of someone as tall as Wiggins.
Yeah. So he needs to use his entire body to create power. And if you've got that rhythm and your body's strong, and this is why we talk about like upper body strength as well, core strength for cyclists. This is why it becomes important.
So there's a big, I know we're literally about to get broom wagoned, but one of the big things in kind of running is pelvic oscillation and kind of how the pelvis kind of moves in this kind of 3D rotary form to create kind of like good extension through the posterior chain. Yeah. And cycling is a posterior chain sport.
Yeah.
And if you can't activate your posterior chain, well, good luck.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, Matt, not all of this kind of like movement and kind of like, quote unquote, rocking and rolling is created equal. You have to be in control of it in order to get the most out of it.
Yeah. If you can control it, then, that's great. I guess the only other thing is where cycling differs from running is that it's also a closed chain.
True.
Much more closed chain, i.e. you're sat on a saddle.
Yeah.
And this is where, we just don't know. We don't know how comfortable or not comfortable that is.
That's true.
Yeah. But if you can operate within that kind of window that the bike creates, then,
Yeah. And the movements don't necessarily have to be big.
Yeah.
Like they can be actually very, very small and make a massive, massive kind of difference. But you're dead right. In kind of like, where you're kind of, the direction of the rotation is massive. Are you rotating away from your kind of flexed knee at the top of the pedal stroke, or are you rotating in towards it? The two are very different.
Yeah. Oh, interesting stuff. So this is a discussion for, I think, the next podcast. So we will get more into the movement of the hip, talking about rotation, and then things that we can do within our bike fit. There's, of course, lots of discussion around crank length, how that affects positions. Is this new high and forward position going to affect crank length choices? Things like that. And maybe talking a little bit more about the unusual biomechanics of certain riders, runners, triathletes, and see where that gets us. But I'm sure some other interesting things in the tour will crop up in the meantime, so we'll throw that into the mix too. But the race season is full gas at the moment, so always lots to talk about. As always, if you've got some questions for us, get them in there. I did get some good questions this week. We didn't get a chance to discuss them, but I'll see if we can throw them into the next podcast. But keep them coming, guys, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening, as always. See ya.
If you made it to the end of this episode, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, do leave us a rating or review, as this really helps other riders find our podcast too, and motivates us to keep making more episodes. Thanks for your support, and catch you on the next one.
Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Wei or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram @FDN_bikefit. Until next time, keep on spinning.